Okay, so I'm going to wrap up this little series of stories with something that's a little more concise and a little bit shorter, but I think it's an important observation that I was able to make, and it was something that helped shape and form where my work ethic is at today. I think I've had a good work ethic ever since I came into the live sound industry with a good work ethic. But I think that it's also important to give you an example of how it is continuing to evolve and how my work ethic and my philosophy about what this job is really all about and what it's supposed to be and what it the potential of what it can be. I think it's important for you to understand some of these stories. So having been at the bottom of the hill since August of 2006 now, so I'm coming up on almost 13 years that I've worked here. It's fortunate that I've been able to make this observation because I think if I'm like a lot of people who start out in working in bars and small clubs doing live sound, you know, one of two things pretty much happens. Like this will describe like 90. I mean, sure there's like, you know, we can put an asterisk on this, and there's you know, there's going to be some anomalies, but I would say that the overwhelming majority of people, this is going to be true, is that one of two things happens. You start out doing live sound in a bar or small club, and if you have a good attitude and if you have a really good work ethic and you impress the right people and you do right in terms of like your job and you don't half-ass it and you work really hard all the time and you always bring your best skill set and your best attitude to what you do, you're not going to stay working on the bar and small club circuit for very long. You're going to move up into bigger places. So you might, you know, there might be people who work in bigger venues who like they started here, but they were only at this level for like a few years, maybe kind of just getting enough experience and, you know, getting noticed by other people. And then they started getting like touring gigs and that kind of stuff. Or the other option is you end up like a lot of people who get stuck at this level forever because they don't have a good work ethic and because they don't have a good attitude towards other people they work with, and they don't pay attention to the psychology side of the job, and they don't pay attention to the fact that ultimately you still have to have customer service skills to some degree, even though this isn't like a retail job. You still have to treat people right. You still have to do right by people. And so those people get stuck here forever. Not here, not like the bottom of the hill, but they get stuck in the bar and small club circuit forever, and they just become really bitter and miserable, and they don't ever grow in their skill set, and they don't ever really advance in their career. That pretty much is going to be 99% of the people. Now, my circumstances for why I've remained at bottom of the hill for such a long time are very unusual, and they're very different than what most people are going to have happen with their career. And I'm glad, because I feel like in being able to stay here that long, you know, it has helped inform my philosophy and only further prove the importance of a good work ethic and having like an explicit philosophy about your job, and like having a set of beliefs and a code of ethics of how you operate and how you deal with people in this environment. So the observation, the thing that I wanted to talk about, is that when I started working here in 2006, every once in a while I would have like a conversation with somebody, say, oh, I started working at this club at the bottom of the hill, and you know, it's already like a legendary club. It had already been here for 15 years at that point, and it was already known all across North America as being like one of the coolest, like just the best vibe, as just being like a really, really great place with awesome sound and like cool people working here, and the bands get treated really well, and they pay like, you know, either good door deals or good guarantees or whatever. Just a very like musician friendly place that had already built a great reputation. And so I was thrilled when I got the chance to get my foot in the door here, and I really took the ball and decided to run with it. But every once in a while I would get sort of like a cynical comment from somebody like, oh yeah, bottom of the hill, like, yeah, that's cool. I don't know, man. I kind of feel like bottom of the hill was just like cooler back in like '99. Like that was when I saw Death Cab there, like on their very first tour or something, you know, and they'll reference something from like, you know, here it is 2006, and they're telling me about like how it was cooler in like 98 or 99. And so then a few years later, let's fast forward to say like 2009 or 10. I'm having another conversation with somebody, say, oh yeah, I've been working at this club at the bottom of the hill, and I also tour with bands now, and I'm kind of like doing all this stuff in live sound order. And they'll go, oh yeah, bottom of the hill. Yeah, I don't know. Bottom of the hill was kind of feel like it was cooler back in like 2002, 2003, like when Rilo Kiley played there, or when like the Beastie Boys did that unannounced secret show back in like 2002 or whatever. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. I feel like I've heard this story before. And then, fast forward to it's like 2012 or 2013, and I'm still here in the club. Like I said, I haven't like moved away from it in a way that I would not be able to make this observation. So then it's 2013, let's say, and people are like, yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like Bottom of the Hill was so much cooler, like back in 2007 when like Portugal the Man played here, and like da-da-da-da, and they just start rattling off all these band names. And what I started to realize, I was like, wait a minute, this is just nostalgia. There's no objective fact to anything that these people have been saying over all these years. This is just when I was in my late teens and early 20s and had more disposable income, and I used to party a lot more, and I used to go out to see a lot more live music before I was like graduating from college and getting my career and like getting married and having kids. Everyone's got this time period from 6 to 10 years earlier where no matter what year it is, they're always looking back that 5 or 6 to 10 years and saying how everything was so much cooler back then because they have a certain nostalgia for that time period. And they're just not as involved in music anymore. But because I was here long enough and I was able to make this observation that this is just like an annually recurring thing that just always rolls forward a couple more years. And then people, also that along with the fact that people will walk through the club and they'll point at all the old posters on the walls, and they'll point at all the old calendars on the wall next to the kitchen of all the just random months from like 1991 all the way up through 2010. And they'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe that band played here on the same night as that band for $8 on a Tuesday. And here's when the Black Keys played here, and here's when, and all of these bands that have since gone on to blow up and be huge bands, like they all started out on their touring circuit playing small places like this. And so what I began to realize is that provided that you're working at a cool club where someone at least has some kind of finger on the pulse of good music that's happening, there's always cool stuff happening, and that's what people don't realize. They get trapped in this loop. They get trapped in this nostalgia thing where they want to talk about how things were cooler 5 or 7 or 10 years ago. And I look back at all those calendars and posters, and I look back at the entire time frame of when I've been here, and I realize, man, there's always cool shit happening. There's always good music. There's always good performers out there, and I'm really lucky that I didn't become nostalgic for a different era, and that I'm not like cynical about music like today, or how it's different from 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 28 years ago when the club started. It's been really eye-opening to hear people repeat those stories, because now I can look at it and I can just say, you know something, most of those nights on those old calendars when take any band that's huge right now, chances are they probably played at the Bottom of the Hill 5 or 10 years ago when they weren't huge. Chances are whoever worked on that particular night and was the engineer, they probably had no idea that band was going to be a band that 10 or 15 years later, everybody was going to know who that band was, and everybody was going to be talking about that band, and that band was going to be winning a Grammy or selling out like arenas or something like that. So the way that has helped inform and shape my work ethic, even though I feel like I came into this place with a really strong, good work ethic, as I began to notice that, I began to realize, you just never know. You never know when it's going to be a great night. Why don't I just come to work every day assuming that every single show is a show that someone's going to be talking about in 10 or 20 years, or that someday people are going to be spending a bunch of money on eBay to buy the original poster art for some limited edition poster that was made for that show, or whatever the case may be. Again, maybe because they're nostalgic or whatever, but I think that as an engineer, it's really only helped galvanize and strengthen my philosophy about my job, and it's helped to sort of shore up, if there were ever any doubts about the sort of the meaning of all of this, because in a lot of ways I sometimes think of how absurd it is that I have like the privilege and the ability to like barely eke out a living here in the Bay Area, the most expensive region of the entire country, doing something so cool that I love doing so much, but only still over time, not only am I not becoming one of those cynical, bitter people who is trapped in like bars and small clubs because they're such a awful, misanthrope and that no one wants to deal with them. I've only become more optimistic about my job and more driven, I guess you could say, to really want to bring my best self to this job, because I do now have a perspective across time that a lot of people might not get if they only work at a certain level of the industry for a certain amount of time, and then they move on and they kind of continue to go up the rungs of the ladder. Well, I've done those other rungs on the ladder, but I've chosen to stay here, and that's another whole video and another whole topic about why, with the resume that I have, I still choose to work in a very, very small place like this, and I don't really want to work anywhere else at this point. But I just think that is hopefully something that will make sense to some of you, to realize that just don't be nostalgic. There's always cool stuff happening, and you're never gonna know. Like sometimes you'll see a band and you'll go, oh my gosh, this band is so amazing. I bet a year from now, they're gonna be huge. And then drugs and partying and stupid shit happens, and the next thing you know, the band completely implodes, and this band with like tremendous potential goes nowhere. And then there could be some other band that might be the opening band that you mixed for one night that didn't really make much of an impression on you at all. Like they didn't suck, but they weren't like totally great. You weren't thinking like, oh, this band will be playing in arenas soon. And lo and behold, 3 or 4 years later, that band is playing in arenas. I've seen this stuff happen. I've watched it happen numerous times. And so it just really, I think it's important that you understand that. I think it's important that for those of you who are new and don't have the time and the history and the perspective that I've been able to gain from being at this one great club for so long, just know that you're never gonna realize, you're never gonna really know it when it's happening, with very, very rare exceptions. There will be times where you'll be right about the fact that certain bands deserve to be huge, and they will go on to be huge. But for the most part, you're never gonna know. So go at your job always thinking every night that tonight could be one of those nights, and let that be a way to convince yourself to bring 100%, and don't phone it in, and don't half-ass it. Don't cut corners. Just bring the best version of yourself to the job that you possibly can on that particular day, because what if it was some band that ends up becoming some legendary huge band, but you didn't have a good time with them, or they didn't have a good time? They might always look back and say, oh yeah, back, touring in clubs was such a miserable experience. Oh man, remember that time we played at that one place? And they're thinking of the place that they dealt with you about how awful it was. Contrary to that, there are so many bands that I've had come through here over the years where their van blew up on the side of the freeway in Fresno and they're like 6 hours away or whatever. I've had so many bands over the years who broke down in the desert, or they broke down driving down from Portland, Oregon or whatever, and they did everything they had to do. And when they came here, they would say, usually on stage to their audience, we would be willing to cancel any show on this tour, but we will not cancel a Bottom of the Hill show, because they'd played here before and they knew that there was always going to be something special that happens at that place. So if you're phoning it in and you're doing things like you're just taking half measures to just kind of get through the day or get through the night, that might be the thing that just sort of like tips the scales in the wrong direction, where that band doesn't have a great experience here. So don't half-ass it, do everything 100%, and that is what will get you noticed and get you more opportunities. I don't know what else to say about that. Sorry it was so long-winded, but that's it. All right, thanks for bearing with me. Bye.